During his evening address last night, President Zelensky announced that two L-39 two-seat training jets had crashed in a training incident, killing the three pilots on board. One of those pilots, the call sign Deuce, the middle pilot here, was an extremely experienced combat pilot, and he also had a great mastery of English. So he used to conduct a lot of media interviews, including with Sky's own Deborah Haynes. This was very much supported by President Zelensky, who needed to keep the war in Ukraine at the top of the media agenda, and Deuce was a very popular figure. Now, a formal inquiry will be conducted, but that has not stopped speculation as to why three experienced pilots would end up losing their lives in a training accident. One theory was that Russian missiles were to blame, but the wreckage came down 100 miles to the west of Kyiv, and the pilots would have had advance warning were there any missiles in the air, and they would have been able to eject. So it looks very unlikely. A second theory, because the two aircraft were flying very closely together in formation at parts of the sortie, that maybe they bumped into each other. Now, these jets fly at hundreds of miles an hour, but when they're in formation, they're exactly the same speed relative to each other. And whilst it's not uncommon for aircraft to bump each other, that generally just puts a dent in the fuselage and doesn't bring down the aircraft. And if it did, the pilots would eject. What's far, far more likely is an eyewitness reported seeing the aircraft moving apart, then closing in on each other. That is a classic setup for dogfighting or combat. You move apart about 3 miles, turn aggressively into each other, and then you set up a min-separation pass, and then it's game on. The fight is on. But at the merge, you're doing about 1,000 miles an hour. And if you get that wrong, and let's face it, you're flying at a mile every 3 seconds at that time, it could very quickly go badly wrong and explain the mangled wreckage and the loss of life. This is a personal tragedy for the families involved, but more particularly for Ukraine Air Force, because President Zelensky has worked tirelessly to secure the F-16 fighter jets for Ukraine. But the jets itself won't deliver combat air capability. They'll need experienced pilots, not only to fly them, but also to train the next generation of pilots. And to lose three on a training exercise is a huge setback. This is a really sad loss for the Ukrainian Air Force.